that'll kind of encapsulate us. And the answers, they can be, you know, relatively I don't know, short or something, because then they can be kind of clipped in. But let's see how we go, and we can work with everything.
Yeah, perfect. No problem.
Magic. Okay, right then. Craig, thank you so much for joining me, and I really appreciate you doing this. And would you like to give people an introduction of who you are and the overview?
First of all, absolutely, Keith, and thanks very much for the opportunity. My name is Craig Featherby. I live in South Africa, proudly South African Springbok supporter, the #1 rugby team in the world, and run a series of companies throughout Africa in the financial services sector, in the hospitality sector, as well as the, weirdly enough, the alcoholic beverage sector, as I have a wine farm in Stellenbosch.
Lovely. I love that. I love that. And I love the fact that you're involved with the alcohol industry, because it's just, it's fantastic. It speaks volumes to you and to your character, as I've got to know you throughout this whole process. And that's been fantastic. Explain to people the kind of the link to the alcohol kind of industry and where that is, Craig.
So in May of 2023, my father sadly passed away, and he had, in his retirement, purchased a wine farm and built up a successful wine brand here in Cape Town. And so for my sins, I've inherited the farm and all the problems that go with it, and the fact that there are lots of bottles of wine that comes from grapes, and you have to sell those bottles of wine and obviously try and make some money. So that's how the wine farm came into the mix, and it's been it's been a diverse business venture to be able to get involved in, which is very similar to the financial services business. You produce something, you sell it, and hopefully you make some money.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. And that kind of brings us around to I suppose my kind of starting question for you, Craig. Why was the time right for you to, pick up the phone, to message me, to get in touch and to say, hey, Keith, I wouldn't mind having a conversation. What was that kind of lead up on that process to you saying, actually, I might be ready to actually take some action here and maybe take a break?
Keith, I think it was very briefly threefold. #1, September of last year, I turned 50. In October, the company that I founded 10 years ago turned 10, the financial services firm. And we were plotting the strategy for the next 5 years, and we have some very, very robust goals to continue our distribution and accumulation of assets across Africa. And I realized that in order to achieve these robust goals, myself as well as my team potentially need to scale their output. And #1, I felt as though at my current level of ability, I probably wouldn't have made it. That was #1. #2, 2024 was a challenging year for many. For me, it involved in a lot of traveling, a lot of entertainment, client entertainment, staff entertainment, and you get to the point where you know that you've just completely overindulged, and you just get on autopilot. The alarm goes off at 5 o'clock. You've got a headache, but you just push through it. You take a cup of Panado, but 5, 6 o'clock you're back on the wine that night, and it was just months and months into that. And I just realized that this is not great, and it's not sustainable. And then lastly, I'd been watching you on LinkedIn and watching all your posts and all the crazy things that you do, and I was actually intrigued. There's all these points. You're supposed to feel this and you're supposed to feel that, and after 30 days you're going to feel this and you're going to do that. So I was actually quite intrigued in terms of, is this a load of bullshit? Is it a lot of
is this Irish guy? Is he talking crap?
Correct. So I was actually intrigued to see whether it actually was or it wasn't. So those were primarily the three reasons. One, I want to perform better. I want to be able to output and create greater output. Two, I realized that the current path was probably not sustainable. And three was probably more intrigue.
I love that. I love that. And just drill down on that second one. You say it wasn't sustainable and I might not have made it. Just what do you really mean by that, Craig? Like in terms of, especially when you're linking it towards your health, and I know you touched on that your father passed away. Um, what was your thinking there when it came to your health and the link to alcohol?
Um, Keith, whether it's turning 50 and you start hearing people having heart attacks when they're in the 50s and 60s and 70s, but sometimes you hear people having heart attacks when they're in the 40s. Um, and and whether it's linked to that, whether it's linked to that sort of magical 50 age, whether it was just sheer overindulgence, but I realized that something's got to give. You can't carry on pushing 12, 14 hours a day, sleeping, taking sleeping pills. Then you're on cholesterol pills, you're on blood pressure pills, you're on triglycerides, you're on, you've got a mirage of medication that you're taking to push you further, when in fact it's actually not necessary if you just really fundamentally take a step back and look at yourself and look at some of the habits that you potentially started, and change a few things. So I think that's where it started.
It's so interesting how you explain that. And you end up taking medication for other medication, and you got this kind of layer and this concoction. There were so many people. There's so many guys and whether they're returning from the 40s into the 50s, and they just have found themselves at this point in this juncture. Just explain to people what have you kind of taken out of your life in terms of the medication that you're no longer, and the actual benefits. And you said you were interested in reading the things I was saying, and you'll experience it. What has it been like? Have you experienced them?
So I think the first thing that you really do experience is you generally do sleep like never before. I used to take one still knocks every night. I no longer take any sleeping pills to put me to sleep. I'm piling into bed at a reasonable hour and I'm sleeping right the way through. So you generally do sleep exceptionally well. And whether you go into 2 REMs or 3 REMs or how many REMs you're supposed to, you actually wake up and you feel like you're ready to go. You have probably about 500% more energy. You don't have any slumps around 2, 3, 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Funny enough, because of that energy, your output is so much more. So come sort of 9, 10 o'clock at night, you're feeling pretty knackered, and you tend to sort of fall asleep on the couch. But I suppose that's also okay. I've also noticed the mental clarity has been quite alarmingly increased. You tend to be a lot sharper in your thought process, in your ability to communicate, and your ability to consume information. And in my business, in the financial service business, you're dealing with regulators, you're dealing with high profile clients. You need to be on your game. So those are the three things that I quickly noticed. Yeah, you want to snack more. So you're probably going to be careful of your snacking habits. You're going to try and keep your sugar down, because you're now not got the routine of having something in your hand, so you're always looking for something to eat. But sleep, energy, mental clarity have been the three things that have just blown me away.
I love it. I love it. And to have energy in your 50s, going into your 50s, the start of your 50s, that decade, that can really be kind of a crossroads for people. Some people, that's the start of them maybe becoming old, or it could be just a whole new start of a phase in your life where you live to 90 years of age and beyond, hopefully. What's your mornings been like? Because I've loved being able to see some lovely pictures of you walking the dogs, and just being able to get up and feeling fresh. It's a lovely feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's again, you go back to your previous position. The alarm would go off. You'd probably snooze for 5 minutes. You'd snooze for probably another 5 minutes. You'd spit out some profanities in terms of why you don't want to get up, and then you'll start reasoning with yourself, and you'll force yourself up. And we've all been there, and we've been there, some like myself, more often than not. But you push yourself and you get through it, and off you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, 4:30, 4:45, wide awake before the alarm goes
Wow.
off, actually looking forward to getting up.
Yeah.
During the break over Christmas, I was up on the farm walking the dogs, 5:15 in the morning, watching the sunrise. That just didn't happen in the past.
No.
It really didn't.
No.
And the great thing about that is, when you're starting your day at 5 o'clock, by 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock you've done a normal day. So now you've actually got your whole afternoon to get stuck into a whole pile of other things. So
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
created more time for me as well, which links back to the ability to scale my businesses, which is
Exactly.
extremely important to me.
It's so true. So someone said to me recently, like, "Oh, what do you do in the what do you do in the evenings, like, you know?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, I like to have some food and I watch a bit of TV and I like to read. And that's when I have my beer and my wine." And I thought, I was like, "What do I do in the evening?" I was like, "Oh, that's exactly what I do. I watch some TV, I read a book, I do something with my kids, I have some food. I just don't do it with now a bottle of wine. It's in
100%.
fact, all them other things are actually better without the alcohol now."
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then also, in South Africa, drinking and driving is very, very much frowned on, which I'm sure it is in the UK as well. So in the past, you would be very limited to,
Yeah,
your activities unless you took an Uber or you had a driver or something to that effect.
yeah,
Now someone phones you up and says, "Hey, you fancy coming around at 4 o'clock in the afternoon?" You haven't got a bottle of wine in you, so you can jump in your
yeah,
car and off you go. So
yeah,
again, it creates more time and more opportunity,
yeah,
which gives you the ability to just do more things, I guess.
yeah. Freedom, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And last question, Craig. What would you say? Because there'll be people that will see this, your network, people maybe on LinkedIn or something like that, and they'll have heard this before. It's no new news to say, look, take a break from alcohol, and that is what we're talking around. Just taking a break and seeing how long you can extend that break for. But you're now coming up to getting very close to day 80 of a break that we set off back at the tail end of last year. What would you be saying to those people that are looking at this and maybe going, could I do this? Would I be interested? What would you be saying to them, Craig?
Well, again, if I go back to my point number 3, intrigue was one of my principal drivers as well. Is what everybody's telling me, is this correct? And I'm a skeptic, and I can fundamentally say I've experienced it and I've lived it and I've enjoyed it. Um, I would just say, if you're wanting to try and change and just try and create a different type of life, give it a
Yeah,
bash. Worst thing that happens is you get your health on track for a period of time. You reset a few things, and maybe you reset your norm. So instead of your norm being like that, maybe
yeah,
it's slightly adjusted. People ask me all the time, Craig, is this forever and ever and ever? And I said,
yeah,
I haven't set a date. I haven't set. But for me, is I'm enjoying where I am now.
yeah,
And whilst I continue to enjoy what I'm doing and I'm seeing the benefits, then for me that's benefit. So I think, to answer your question, Keith, my advice to anyone who's toying with the idea, be ready for it. And that goes back to, if you remember, I contacted you in October and I said, look, I'm not going to start in October, I'll start in November, because I had a big October. So you've got to make sure that you're ready for it. But then more importantly, you're ready to understand that the challenges that you are going to face, because guess what, it's not exactly easy. It has been tough, but it does get easier. But then more importantly, and in conclusion, it's just the rewards far outweigh the rewards of drinking. I've been pleasantly surprised.
I love that. I love how you've explained that. And those tricky bits, it is important. I'm glad you've said that, because this is it's not a Hollywood movie. It's not an all rosy, outlook. There is some tricky bits. There is some times where you've got to ultimately make that decision and put on your big boy pants. But what I also caveat that with, the rewards, the good parts, they can become multiple and they can really factor up. You can get that real compound effect. And so they outweigh that tricky part for when you've got to
Absolutely.
make that decision.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Magic. Okay. I will pause there, Craig, on
Cool.
that one. Thank you so much, mate. That was brilliant. Yeah, you're a living billboard for it. I really do appreciate that as well, and you speak so well.
No, it's a pleasure. Absolute pleasure. I and I mean it. You know, it really has. Um, it has made a significant difference in many aspects of my life. So I wouldn't do it flippantly. And yeah, if you need anyone, if you want to pass any potential prospects my details and say, hey, give Craig a call, I'll be more than happy to have a chat
Yeah.
with anyone.
Yeah, no, I do appreciate that. I appreciate that. Magic. Okay, we are good. How is Di? How is this week looking?
Yeah, no, she's really well. She's pretty chuffed in terms of her process as well. She laughs that she's done it without Keith, and I've had to have
I
someone
love
like
it.
Keith doing it. But that's
I love
fine.
it. I need to do a call with Di. Hey, Di, what's it been like?
Yeah. But yeah, no, she's doing well. This week's looking good. I've got a fair bit of travel coming up at the end of the month, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And yeah,